Hey everybody, look who's out. Just fed the tank and I put the algae wafers in there. And this Pleco usually comes out when the algae wafers are in there. But he usually skitters away when I walk up, and especially when I talk, so I'm not going to be saying too much here. So that's where he spends most of his time, underneath of that rock and up in that log. So you can see how that log's already got markings on it where it's been scraped clean. So all in all, I'm really happy with the way this tank's coming together. We might get a little look at him again. So backs back out of there. So at this point, this tank is officially overstocked. I don't mind having my tanks heavily stocked or plentifully stocked, but this tank is now overstocked. I've got so many fish in here, and a lot of them are fairly significant in size, and this gives you a pretty good idea of what I mean when I say that. You can see these sucker fish right here are fairly significant. Those shiners are pretty big. I've got that tilapia that usually hides down at the other end of the tank whenever I come near it. Those creek chubs are getting big, and of course I've got lots and lots of those little striped minnows you can see swimming around there, and of course that all adds up. And I just added 8 silver dollars, and while they're fairly small now, they'll get bigger than that angelfish right there eventually. And so this tank is way in need of a reduction in stock pretty soon. So I'm definitely going to be getting in here and putting my minnow trap in there. I've talked about this before. I will set my camera up and I'll let it roll, and we'll see what happens. I can always, go through the footage, and maybe we can just get at least the little bits here and there where the fish are swimming into the tank. I don't know if I'm going to set it up with bait in it or not. I think I'm just going to set it in there. I really do believe that over time these fish have such a limited area to swim, and the way the minnow trap has that sort of funnel shaped entrance, they'll just swim down and swim into it. I mean, I've thrown the minnow trap out in the stream and with no bait in it before. I've cleaned it out, the bait was gone, and rather than take it home, I just threw the minnow trap back in the water and came back the next day, and there was fish in it again, even though there was no food in it. So I definitely believe in this tank I will be catching quite a bit of those minnows, even in a fairly short period of time. My main concern is getting these creek chubs out of there. You can see there's at least 3 of them in there that are growing pretty fast, and they're going to not only start adding to the bioload, but they'll start getting aggressive towards the smaller fish, and they'll start trying to eat some of those minnows. And I'm not so worried about the minnows getting eating, but what I am worried about is the creek chubs trying to eat minnows that they can't eat, and then it just becomes a big mess for everybody. It's one thing, if a minnow gets eaten, a minnow gets eaten, but, minnows struggling and other minnows choking on, the creek chubs are choking on the minnows they can't swallow, and I don't like seeing those kind of episodes in the tank. And we're probably getting about to that size where those creek chubs are going to be, doing that kind of behavior here pretty soon. So I'll say make sure you're subscribed now. I am going to keep rolling the footage here because I want to see that Pleco while he's out. For as long as he's going to stay out, I'm going to try to get him on video. But make sure you're subscribed and you won't miss the video of me putting the minnow trap in there and everything. What I'm really hoping is I don't catch those silver dollars. Well, that's interesting, the way he's sort of drifting up in the air on his front fins like that. Wonder what that was all about. Territorial display, making himself look bigger. I don't know. That's interesting. I've still never determined the species of this one. It's supposed to be the same as the one I've got in my 55-gallon tank. And while it looks really, really similar, the one in my 55-gallon tank has these sort of gray markings. This one almost has them, but it's just not quite as prominent. You can see sort of the ridge lines over the armor plating on the back of the head, and sort of where the sharp angles are on the other one. They would be really pale patterns. And I was looking over to see if the other one was out, but it's not. I really can't believe this one's staying out. I normally don't even get this good of a look at the fish, let alone standing here running my mouth and pointing the camera right at it. It usually doesn't stay out like this at all, so this is pretty good. Anyway, I still don't know what species this is. The closest I've been able to come to is the gold spot Pleco. It was sold as a high fin spotted Pleco from Petsmart. And the other one that I've got in my 55-gallon tank was also sold as a high finned spotted Pleco. Same tank, same store. And again, looks really, really similar. The only differences really are the sort of, ghostly type patterns I was talking about, those sort of pale gray markings. And if you'll notice the fin, how it's got that sort of orange band across the top of the caudal fin there. The other one has that too, but the arc and the curvature, the filaments on the tail here curve way around. The bottom one and the top one actually almost overlap each other. They're so pronounced and curved. So maybe it's a male and a female thing. I really don't know. And again, I've said before, when you start getting into these Loriacaridae and these L number plecos, they just sort of get lumped together as plecos. This may not be a plecostomus technically. A lot of the ones that we call plecos are not actually plecos, but they just sort of get lumped into that category. And this one certainly is going to be lumped into that category as far as I'm concerned, because I call it a pleco. But regardless, the L numbers, the Loriacaridae numbers, are really confusing, and they're jumbled up, and it's all industry-wide stuff. It's not necessarily scientifically based. It's more commercially based, and it just depends on what company has located them and tries to lay claim to the numbers and new species. And again, it's got more to do with the business of selling fish than it does with any kind of scientific classification process. And it makes them really hard to identify, subtle differences in species and so on and so forth. So who knows what this actually is. It's just my high-finned spotted Pleco that I got from PetSmart. But it's a really cool fish. I really like it a lot. I debated getting rid of it for the longest time because it was getting so big so fast, but it just kind of slowed down, and it hasn't really gotten a lot bigger than this. So while it will continue to grow throughout its life, fish are indeterminate growth animals. They will just get bigger and bigger and bigger, but the older they get, the slower that growth gets. And once they get past their sort of prime growth in their earlier years, that'll slow down. And of course, the older the fish lives, the longer the lifespan of the fish, the more dramatic that becomes. So I suspect that if this fish lives another 10 years in this tank, it might start getting a little too big for it eventually. I think these are listed to get up to 14 inches, but then again, they probably don't even really know exactly what fish this is, so I don't know how they can tell me exactly how big it's going to get. And of course, the numbers you see on the PetSmart tanks aren't always accurate anyway. So again, who knows? But for now, it doesn't seem to be growing too fast for me. This is a 125-gallon tank. The only real issue is all of the overstocking with the other fish, not this one fish in particular. So there you go. I'm not going to sit here and ramble all night. We've been at it for almost 10 minutes now, and he's apparently just going to stay out for the rest of the evening. So there you go. There's a really, really good solid look at my high-finned spotted Pleco, whatever actual species that is, who knows. So make sure you're subscribed, as I said before. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. And then, of course, this one is my America's tank, as we're calling it now. So thanks again. I'll see you on the next one.